Hello, Fiedelbogen here. To my fellow workers in the vineyard, worldwide, greetings. Today's talk is called Feminism is Perpetual Revolution. We are creating a map. This map charts the workings of feminism as a social and political organism. However, our map does not pretend to be exhaustive, nor does it pretend to be the best map for every local task that might arise in the course of future campaigning. It claims only to chart the terrain in terms of master strategy. Those of localized expertise may draw tactical maps as needed for localized scenarios. We create maps in order to pattern our world, for we know that those who oppose us are drawing up maps as well, with plans for us and patterns for our world. We mean to block their presumption and to regain a bit of liberty, for which the price is eternal vigilance. Therefore, we too make maps and plans. We operate independently of feminist self-description and feminist subjectivism, for those things are an involuted microcosm meant to wrap a suffocating blanket around our brains and our lives. We prefer to study feminism from outside of feminism itself, in terms of what we need to know in order to let the air out of its tires. We feel doubly well advised in our policy when we consider that feminists have difficulty agreeing among themselves what feminism is. But we know what feminism means to us, and that suffices for our plans. Counter-feminist analysis understands feminism as an unstable system of restless energy, which strives continually to arrange the surrounding world according to its needs. However, since feminism's needs are themselves shaped and guided by the evolving condition of the surrounding world, feminism must accordingly modify its demands to suit the changes which feminism, introduces in the first place, simply in order to sustain expansionary equilibrium. This fuels another round of change, and another, a condition that we call perpetual revolution. Perpetual revolution. Feminism's being is identical with its being in motion. If feminism stopped moving, it would become meaningless. As when air stops moving, wind becomes meaningless. Such is perpetual revolution. So, perpetual revolution operates as an endless loop of change driven by feedback. However, one thing endures as an unfluctuating core, namely, the drive for female supremacy arising from disaffection toward males. This core constancy explains why feminism so often contradicts its own dogmas. Those dogmas lack the true character of dogma, being instead convenience doctrines, to be jettisoned when they are no longer convenient. Convenience doctrines lack constancy. For feminism, constancy appears in one point only, as stated above, the drive for female supremacy arising from disaffection toward males. Feminism's status as a perpetual revolution dictates that feminism must remain in motion. Two things make this necessary. A, the fact that feminism is a hate movement, and B, feminism's never-ending quest for a chimerical equality between men and women. Let us consider item A. Here, anti-male feeling validates itself through a selective use of data, through bias confirmation, in other words. And this bias confirmation must remain in motion, continually searching out new material in order to keep itself in business. It must remain dynamic. It cannot become static. Stasis would render further deception impossible because it would freeze the core of the deception. And this would freeze the entire discussion. So you could no longer shift the discussion around like a game of three-card Monte, and the deception could no longer hide itself. Now let us consider item B, which concerns equality. The feminists love to remind us that they are just looking for equality. Oh, the saving power of cliches. The heart of this particular flim-flam has already been scrutinized, so I will pass efficiently to the matter at hand, and that is that so-called sexual equality is no better than a shimmering heat wave mirage which moves ahead of the deluded traveler in proportion to his travels, and so stays forever out of reach. This ideally suits the requirements of perpetual revolution. A twofold task, one that might seem laughably self-contradicting, sets a particular burden upon feminism's perpetual revolution. It must establish the fictional world of feminism as the concrete, living actuality of daily life, and yet simultaneously prevent this new state of affairs from stabilizing itself. Any such stabilization would annihilate the movement along with all hope for a complete subjugation of men. The feminist movement must at all costs prevent a growth of normality from which a static pattern of life could evolve. In a static pattern of life, feminism's constitutive fictions become progressively harder to sustain. Yet these fictions remain imperative as ever. The campaign for total subjugation of the male population and the erasure of non-feminist reality is structurally integrated into feminist ideology, and the end of these things would spell the end of feminism itself. If feminist culture becomes a static pattern of life with clearly understood rules and boundaries, then feminism will lose its irrationally all-encompassing dynamism. But this it cannot afford to do. It has power because it is a dynamo, and it is a dynamo because it is dynamic. No dynamism, no dynamo, no power. Feminism cannot settle into a static form of existence, for this would entail a static and rational distribution of power between the sexes, which means that men would be able to regain their equilibrium and their autonomy. Having done so, men would soon master the situation and master the game, if only by regrouping their forces, and then they could no longer be subjugated. It is necessary to keep men perpetually off balance, so they can't get their bearings and adapt to their environment. Hence the need for perpetual revolution. The feminists must continually press forward along their chosen highway in order to compensate for natural forces that would carry them backward if they merely sat down and kept still. How far would or could perpetual revolution extend itself? It is our thesis that perpetual revolution will sooner or later collapse under the pressure of external forces from the non-feminist sector. However, it is of interest to ponder the logical endpoint toward which perpetual revolution points according to the law of its own nature. That endpoint is the annihilation of patriarchy or male privilege. And one must understand feminist code language to know what these things actually mean. It would be necessary to master men from the inside in the totalitarian tradition in order to bring about the consummation of perpetual revolution. The reason for this will be evident if we consider that thought is free, and that destabilization of the social environment might not be quite enough all by itself to violate the sanctity of inner space. Thus, any man who remains in control of his emotions and ideations would have, at least in theory, the power to think ill of feminism, and such a man might turn into an organizer. So the collaborationists, consisting of the pro-feminist men's movement and other males supportive of feminist political energy, are working to instill the necessary deferentiality and servility in as many men as possible, as a prophylaxis against such eventualities, such equilibriums, such autonomies. Feminism's central project, the colonization of male space, can never be complete without the colonization of male inner space. And so long as feminism continues in existence, it will exert directed energy under whatever system of camouflage toward the fulfillment of this goal. This purposefully brief talk has treated in summary form what counter-feminist analysis holds to be the essential facts about feminism upon which any optimally effective counteractive policy ought to build itself. Fiedelbogen. Out.